Hello and welcome to this special episode of Mutual Funds Sahi Hai presents Smart Nivesh Sahi Nivesh, partnered by Times Network. Now this episode is part of our SIP Hero series. Today we're going to talk about kya mutual fund sahi hai for senior citizens. Now senior citizens have worked hard all their lives. They've saved their money. They've saved up for whatever expenses they have. But now as they get into the post 50s, into 60s, into retirement, the concern is what happens with that money. Will that money last? Now, to talk a little bit more about that, I'm joined by Ajit Menon. He's the CEO of PGIM India Mutual Fund. Ajit, thank you so much for talking to us here today. Let's dive in. You know, one concern happens that there is this old thumb rule which says 100 minus age is the amount percentage that should be in equities. Is that still relevant?
Well, firstly, Sumit, thank you for having me on the show. And, you know, as regards this particular thumb rule, 100 minus age, I think it's a great starting point for people to think about their asset allocation, so to speak, is how much money to put into equity. So if you're a young person, if you're 30, you know, 100 minus 30, you could put 70% of your money into equity. And if you're a 60-year-old person, 100 minus 60, you should probably only have about 40% exposed to equity. I say that this is probably a great starting point for people to think about how to do their asset allocation. Is it relevant in today's times? Most would argue no. And the reason for it is that this 100 minus age formula is a very old one. It was, you know, in the 50s and 60s, and you know, when this was propagated. And you know, average age has gone up since then. That's number one. So you're living longer. That's one risk for retirement. And the second is that when you think about asset allocation, fixed income used to give you a much higher rate of return much earlier, right? So many of the older generation will remember that their fixed deposits or bonds were like 10% or 9% and so on and so forth, which is not the case today. So if you used the 100 minus age to do your asset allocation, it's probably not going to be as optimal in today's times or in the times to come compared to much earlier.
Ajit, when we talk about senior citizens who've crossed 60, and let's assume right now I'm talking about the salaried who have gotten into retirement. What's your advice to senior citizens on looking at the expenses that could come up in the phase between retirement and till they carry on their life?
My personal take on this is that a lot of us feel anxious about our retirement finances because we sort of tend to think, and like you said, especially for salaried people, tend to think that I'm going to stop working at a point in time and then my money should last me for till whenever I live, right? I think that the best answer, therefore, to the question that you have is to sort of reimagine this a little bit to say, can I continue working even if I've, you know, left my primary job and I've got a corpus in the bank, but can I continue working at something that I love, something that I'm good at?
Right.
And if you put that into an SIP while you're withdrawing from your original corpus, by the time let's assume that you worry and your corpus will last you only 15 years. And here you have this 15,000-20,000 SIP that you're doing from your little gig that you're doing. Imagine what that corpus is going to be in 15 years. So you'll never worry about money. Your only other choice is make sure that you have a very good emergency fund kept aside for all of this. And an emergency fund, very simply, could be at least 1 year of your expenses kept aside. You want to be more conservative, do more, but I think 6 months to 1 year of your expenses kept aside is a good way to start an emergency fund, and that can be helpful as well.
Like we started the conversation talking about this thumb rule of 100 minus the age. Is there some kind of a thumb rule or something for retired individuals to keep in mind the expenses that they can withdraw? So you have SWPs, they can withdraw regularly from their corpus. But is there some math to say that so much is the percentage of your corpus you can withdraw every year so that the corpus keeps growing and lasts for many years? I mean, till the end of
There is actually, Sumit. I would say that one needs to consider inflation as the main villain, which reduces the purchasing power of your money. So if you have a portfolio that's earning you, let's say, 10% into your retirement, and if let's assume the inflation is 5% or 6%, let's take 6% as the inflation, then your withdrawal rate from your corpus should be 10 minus 6, 4%.
Right.
That's called the real rate of return.
Yes. What kind of mutual funds would you best recommend for senior citizens?
Sure, we can recommend a few. As you are getting into your later years, you don't want your capital to be drawn down too much in market volatility. At the same time, you want returns which will be inflation beating at best, right? So your real returns are positive for you to do your withdrawals. I would therefore think that most people, good advisors, would recommend senior citizens to think for their equity portion of their portfolio to think about hybrid funds. So a balanced advantage fund category in the mutual fund environment is very, very good. I would recommend hybrid funds as a great starting point. Diversified equity is fine if you think you can take a little extra risk. The best answer being that the advisor will check that for you. But I think these categories would probably be the ones to sort of look at.
Fantastic. Ajit, one last question. So we're living in a world now where technology is everywhere, and every business is now a technology business.
Yeah.
In this case, in investments, of course, technology has had a great impact. People are able to invest quickly through technology. They're able to track their portfolio. They're able to track schemes or stocks or whatever they're investing in. But senior citizens might not be so technologically savvy.
Right.
Some are, some aren't. Some
Right.
have struggled with it, but some are like almost like native users.
Right.
How can the industry, or how can these individuals manage their finances without being so dependent on technology, if the case is for them in individual cases? But
Sure, Sumit, by now your audience has already guessed my answer. He's going to say, have an advisor to take care of that. But having said that, I think you're right that technology has made a lot of things easy, and at the same time, it does get complicated for senior citizens to sort of maneuver all of what is available. And there is the real risk of cyber frauds, right? And people getting scammed out of their monies and investments at points in time. So I do think that my answer will continue, therefore, to remain to have an advisor guide you with what it is, because now you've reached that point where you don't want any risk, so you want to really a trusted, qualified, certified person to sort of manage it for you. I would encourage that your audience thinks about all available products that can help them into retirement. For instance, annuities. From the insurance industry is a good way to add into your portfolio. When you do an annuity, you've locked it up. You're not going to have any risk of that income that's coming from the annuity to your family, right? Some people may have children who may have special needs. They worry that what happens if we die? Would somebody take all that money and start reinvesting in some different way that puts everything at risk? That's where things like annuities or having just direct bonds or fixed deposits actually help. So the answer is not one or the other. The answer is a combination of the two. So I would say just don't think about mutual funds when you're in your 60s and building portfolios. Think about products like NPS or the annuities that come out of NPS or insurance annuities as well to create that base regular income for life.
Thank you so much, Ajit, for coming on the show and for sharing your thoughts with us. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a short break, but on the other side of the break, we're going to meet a senior citizen who has pretty much sorted out their financial requirements for their life. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere. It's time for a short break on Mutual Funds Sahi Hai presents Smart Nivesh, Sahi Nivesh, partnered by Times Network. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Anil Kamath. I'm 70 years young. I have been investing in mutual funds for the last 25 years.
Well, Mr. Kamath, thank you so much for talking to us here today. First up, if you could tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about your life story.
Hi, just to begin with, my name is Anil Kamath. I have been working with Siemens for almost 37 years and then retired at the age of 60. It's 10 years since I've retired. I have two daughters, both are married, twin daughters, and my wife was also working for a bank. She has also retired almost 20 years ago.
Right.
And now we are two of us enjoying our retired life.
I want to know a little bit about some of your investment habits. So while you were working, were you regularly investing in mutual funds?
See, initially I was not. I joined Siemens in 77. So initial years, the concept of mutual funds was not known, to me at least. And slowly over a period of last 25 years, I have got into mutual funds.
Great.
So that has helped a lot.
Mr. Kamath, could you tell me the kind of mutual funds that you invested in? Because, I mean, mutual funds are available where they are equity, they invest in equity instruments, and also there are those that invest in debt instruments. So which kind of mutual funds have you been investing in?
So there was only equity. There was mid cap and large cap. More so earlier was large caps.
Right.
Though I never knew the funda. The first 5 years was whatever I was advised. But one thing was very clear, not to invest in more than 3 to 5 mutual funds and not make it 10 or 12.
Wow.
So the focus could be on a few, but the good ones.
Mr. Kamath, while you were investing in equity mutual funds, now obviously the equity by its nature is volatile, and when markets have crashed at different periods of time in the past, what was your thought process at that time? Because you must have seen your savings, your investments being depleted. What was going through your mind at that time?
See, when I started in mutual funds, the funda was very clear that it has to be a period of 15 to 20 years. So this did not bother me much. Yes, the shares impact was there, but there was no choice. Yeah, so mutual funds was one thing I stuck to because it was very clear from the track record also that 15 to 20 years, if you invest, then over a period of time, markets recover. And if I see the outcome, it is really excellent.
And Mr. Kamath, while you were investing, were there some financial goals that you had in mind that you were aiming towards? What kind of benchmarks, what kind of goals did you set for yourself during that period?
Very much, very much. First is I had two daughters, so they had to get married. Yeah. And then my funda was to lead a comfortable retired life. So I made sure between my wife was also working. So between us, we had an understanding that 25% of our salary we will save, come what may. Because being working, the salary does not reduce. Only cost can reduce. So we made a point that we will somehow invest in mutual funds, come what may. And that has really helped. And both the daughters got married. We are having a comfortable house. We could buy a house, apartment I should say in Bombay, not a house. And we are quite comfortable.
Superb. So, Mr. Kamath, since you spoke about the importance of restricting your expenses, and that's really important. But what happens with people sometimes is that they have saved, they have created a certain retirement corpus, but once they get into retired life, their expenses don't stay within limits. Sometimes they spend more than they have budgeted for. Your experience with this, your advice, how are you able to keep your expenses in check? Because that's a very important part of managing one's financial portfolio.
Cost is inbuilt in us. So we are not extravagant. Yes, we travel a lot. But instead of saying, this is what I've learned from the corporate world, to save, instead of living in a 5-star, you can live in a 3-star and enjoy yourself. So we travel, we don't curb much of expenses now because there is a good saving. But this is over, people don't realize over 25, 30 years that you have been consistent in your savings. So we are able to, live a reasonably comfortable life without having any stress of debts.
Right. One important thing that happens, sir, is that once people retire, there's a thumb rule that says 100 minus age should be in equity. And that's what some people believe, that after retirement, maybe having more of debt component in the portfolio, so to avoid volatility. Wanting to know your behavior. What is your investor behavior? What is your risk profile? What is your risk appetite? So how is your asset allocation of your portfolio? Has it been the same while you were working? Has it changed after retiring? Please tell us.
I am a person with high risk. I have reduced my capacity in the equity. So I have reduced my equity from, I would say, 90% to 60-65%, though it's very high, but that is how I'm made.
Mr. Kamath, I know that you have a financial advisor. So just if you could shed some light of your experience working with the advisor, the importance of the role of an advisor, because to help you on this journey of your financial planning journey.
I think it's extremely important because most of us are not knowledgeable in terms of, we go by hearsay. And you can miss the bus in that. Ideal is to take advice of an expert who is day in and day out in this. So that's why I started preferring mutual funds almost 25 years back. The reason being, they are having tremendous knowledge, tremendous capacity compared to us. So it's better to give it in the hands of an expert than taking the risk. Because in volatility, you might lose out unnecessarily. Whereas in mutual funds, over a period of time, you recover well.
That's so true. That's so true. One other aspect that people often ignore is the importance of estate planning, because you've spent so many years working hard, building that big financial corpus, and the importance of leaving it to the next generation in a seamless manner. So just your thoughts about estate planning. What have you accomplished in estate planning?
See, it's very important. I think it's extremely important. We have done ours, and what we have done is try to share whatever we have between the two children. So to the extent possible, 50-50%.
Right.
Then it is for them to manage.
Yes, yes.
But first will be wife, of course.
Of course.
The will also, I would say, go to a good lawyer.
Yes.
It's extremely crucial that sometimes we go for one which says standard document. No. Do it proper. It costs not much, 15,000-20,000, but it's your life earnings. And that it should go in the right hands and drafted and documented well. So we have done it almost, I would say, 7-8 years ago. And then left it to the Almighty. To what happens after us, we don't know.
Before I let you go, sir, just your advice to our viewers who are watching this show of different age groups. Just what can they do, some steps that you have taken and that you could advise them to achieve a peaceful, happy, financially secure retired life?
See, I would say today's generation is totally different. Yeah, but I would only request and suggest that have some savings on a regular and consistent basis, because you have to think 15-20 years. Don't have too much apprehensions that what will happen in the future. But future is what you are going to see, and if you want to benefit, you have to think long term. So I would advise youngsters and even people who are at the retirement stage, start saving if you have not, even at whatever stage you are, in a small way, so that will consider that as a cost you have spent on going to a restaurant. Instead of 4 visits, make 3 visits. But it will go a long way when you are 68, 70. As you rightly said, people are now living longer. So you have to keep healthy, you have to take care of expenses. Children might not be nearby. So you need those funds and not be dependent on anybody. It's my way of thinking.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Kamath, for talking to us and for sharing your life experience with us so that our viewers can benefit from this. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all on this episode of Mutual Funds Sahi Hai presents Smart Nivesh Sahi Nivesh, partnered by Times Network. And I hope you're taking back some important key points from today's conversation. Thank you so much for watching.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.